RNN News. The headlines today take a dramatic turn as new revelations surface about a high-profile case that blends politics, power, and controversy in a way that has people talking across the country. Picture this: a federal judge using the word diversion to describe the Justice Department under Donald Trump and their request to unseal grand jury testimony from the criminal trial of Ghislaine Maxwell. The same Maxwell who was found guilty of serious charges connected to Jeffrey Epstein, a man Trump once called a close friend for a decade. The term diversion was not chosen lightly. It reflects the belief that Trump is trying to shift attention away from any possible connections between himself and the Epstein files, where his name appears multiple times. Instead of focusing on that history, Trump is now making headlines by sending the National Guard into Washington, D.C., a decision that comes 5 years too late, according to critics who point out that on January 6th, when chaos struck the Capitol, no such action was taken. The optics now are striking National Guard troops positioned on city streets, while the local police force numbers over 5,000 officers, not counting hundreds of federal law enforcement personnel. These 200 troops will barely make a difference in security, but will make a large impact in photographs and news coverage, serving as a photo opportunity for Trump supporters. The judge in this case made it clear that the grand jury transcripts in question contained no new significant information that had not already been revealed. During Maxwell's trial, the ruling stated that there is no there, meaning that unsealing the documents would not uncover any new facts of consequence. This is important because Trump's Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General, the latter being a former personal defense lawyer for Trump, had already reviewed the case and knew this fact before making their request for release. The judge went further, describing the Justice Department's position as demonstrably false, a rare and blunt statement from a federal court. This detail shows how the transcripts themselves offered nothing new. They did not identify anyone beyond Epstein and Maxwell as involved. They did not reveal new locations or methods. They did not touch on financial sources or unexplored circumstances surrounding the case. In short, everything that could be shared had already been made public in trial testimony. Where Maxwell chose not to speak in her own defense, the request to unseal these records then appears less about transparency and more about creating the illusion of it all, while distracting from other matters including the Epstein connection, the presence of troops in Washington, and possibly other cities. With Democratic leadership becomes part of that narrative. The goal, it seems, is to generate discussions and visuals that appeal to certain audiences while steering attention away from sensitive subjects. The judge even reminded the public that the Justice Department itself had previously issued a memo stating there was no further investigation warranted into uncharged parties, and that no new evidence was found to justify pursuing others in relation to the Epstein case. This memo came after an extensive review of the Epstein files by both the Attorney General and the FBI Director. Under Trump, involving thousands of agents combing through records, they concluded the matter should be closed with no additional charges forthcoming yet. Here we are with a public spectacle over records that officials already knew held nothing groundbreaking. As these events unfold, questions arise about motives, strategies, and the intricate web of relationships that influence high-level legal moves. What is clear is that the focus of public conversation has been carefully guided in a specific direction through orchestrated actions and statements. And this is where the story becomes even more compelling. Because just as attention is drawn to military presence in cities and political maneuvering, other developments have been taking place behind the scenes. Developments involving Ghislaine Maxwell herself and her sudden transfer from a Florida prison to a low-security facility in Texas, a move that raised eyebrows for its timing and its proximity to her family. The shift happened just days after a private meeting between Maxwell and a senior Justice Department official who happens to have long-standing personal ties to both Trump and Maxwell's legal team. The implications of that meeting and the potential understandings reached during it add yet another layer of intrigue to this unfolding drama. The unfolding situation around Ghislaine Maxwell and the political ripples it is creating has not only sparked public discussion, but also drawn renewed attention from investigative reporters across the globe. Maxwell's transfer to a lower security facility in Texas may, on paper, be described as routine, yet sources familiar with the Bureau of Prisons process quietly admit that such a move is highly unusual for someone with her conviction history and profile. The official explanation given cites space management and inmate classification reviews, but those who have followed her case closely point to the fact that this facility offers more relaxed restrictions and greater access to visitors and communication compared to her previous location in Florida. That access could potentially allow for conversations and arrangements that would be far more complicated in a high-security setting, raising speculation about whether strategic considerations rather than simple bureaucracy drove the change. The timing of the move, coinciding with politically charged maneuvers in Washington, adds further intrigue. Observers note that the combination of military presence in city's grand jury transcript debates, and the sudden easing of conditions for a high-profile inmate seems too coordinated to be mere coincidence. In the political arena, optics often matter more than facts, and in this instance, the visuals of strength, control, and selective transparency appear to be guiding public perception. One political strategist put it plainly, suggesting that the goal is to project an image of decisive action, while keeping potentially damaging associations in the background away from scrutiny. At the same time, the Maxwell case continues to remind the public of the complex web of relationships between power, wealth, and influence. Her trial had already revealed a social network spanning celebrities, financiers, and politicians, yet the most sensitive details were never formally presented to the jury due to evidentiary limits and prosecutorial strategy. Those limits have left open the possibility that there are still aspects of the case the public has not seen or understood, but the official position from the Justice Department remains firm that there is nothing further to pursue. The question then becomes whether that conclusion is genuinely supported by the evidence or shaped by other considerations for Trump. The ongoing attention to Maxwell's history could be politically inconvenient, especially as it involves reminders of past associations. At the same time, creating a public distraction through troop deployments and high-profile legal moves serves a dual purpose. It rallies his political base, and it shifts the conversation toward themes of law and order rather than personal connections to controversial figures. Meanwhile, legal analysts point out that the grand jury transcripts were already handled with extreme care to ensure no legitimate investigative leads were being withheld. This thoroughness undermines any argument for unsealing them. Now, beyond political theater, the judge's remarks about demonstrably false statements from the Justice Department only amplify the perception that this was never about uncovering hidden truths, but rather about shaping headlines to favor a specific narrative. This strategy is not new in politics, but the level of coordination and timing has caught the attention of both supporters and critics, with supporters praising it as clever and opponents condemning it as manipulative. Away from the political noise, Maxwell herself faces the reality of serving out her sentence in a facility where she may find the conditions less oppressive yet still restrictive enough to remind her of the consequences of her conviction. Legal experts say her options for appeal remain limited and unlikely to succeed barring new evidence or procedural errors, neither of which have been identified in her case. The lingering public fascination with her story ensures that any development in her circumstances will be closely watched and possibly politicized in the months ahead. The intersection of her fate with the broader political theater surrounding Trump, the Justice Department, and the media guarantees that this narrative will continue to evolve. The real question is whether the public will ever receive a complete and unfiltered account of what happened, who was involved, and how decisions were made behind closed doors. For now, what is known is shaped by court records, official statements, and strategic leaks, all of which are filtered through layers of interpretation and agenda setting. As such, the Maxwell case remains less about a single person and more about the larger systems of influence, control, and perception that define how power operates in the modern era. And in this environment, every move, whether it is a troop deployment, a legal filing, or a prison transfer, becomes a calculated piece of a much larger puzzle that the public may never see in full.